Sometimes you go sailing and you can really feel the wind on your face. You can see the boat moving through the water. You can tell you're making progress. Sometimes you go sailing and you cannot feel the wind on your face. You cannot see that you're moving quickly through the water, and you do not feel like you're making progress. And this can be deceiving. This is oftentimes due to what's called apparent wind. And this happens in our lives just as much as it does in sailing. We feel like we're not making progress when we actually are. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to the What Could Go Right podcast. We are your hosts, Erik, Orton.
And I'm Emily Orton.
And here we talk about personal growth and sailing. In 2014, we moved aboard a fixer-upper sailboat and bootstrapped a year sailing with our 5 kids, and it changed our lives forever.
We tell the whole story in our memoir, our book, 7 at Sea. On this podcast, we want to help you go from fear to freedom, one adventure at a time. So today we're talking about apparent wind, or the lack of apparent wind in sailing and sometimes in our lives. So we'll start off by Erik's going to share a couple of paragraphs from our book, 7 at Sea, where he's talking about a downwind sail, and this will help you catch the feeling.
All right, so this is, for those of you that might want to read along, this is the last page of chapter 15. And it says, sailing downwind is ironic. Most people have an image of good sailing. It involves a boat with full sails, heeled over slightly or a lot, slicing through the waves with the wind in your hair, and maybe the people aboard look and dress like the Kennedys. We don't look like the Kennedys, nor do we dress like them. Sailing with the wind in your face can look dramatic, but it also turns out to be a long way to anywhere. Sailing into the wind is what you do when you're out for some kicks and thrills on a day sail, or you have no other choice. If the wind is coming from behind you, that's a good way to get where you want to go, but it's also boring. It's slow and boring because it feels like nothing is happening. Sailors use a fancy term called apparent wind, the wind you perceive because of your movement through the air. When you ride a bike, it feels windy. When you stop, it's no longer windy. That's apparent wind. When you sail with the wind, the wind is moving. The wind is moving, but you're moving with it, so it feels like there's no wind, which makes it feel like nothing is happening. That is when you have to look at the water and watch the speed of bits of floating reed and sea foam gliding past. You have to look closely at the things right under your nose to notice the movement.
Yes, I remember when we were sailing, and sometimes it would feel like we were just sitting there, especially when you're maybe out in the ocean and you're not so close to land, and so you can't tell how quickly you're moving past land, and the horizon always looks like a light blue sky and a darker blue ocean, and so you're like, are we getting anywhere? And one of the things that we used to do is we would have our kids like trail a rope in the water, and you could see, oh, it's moving, And I think actually old sailors used to have the knots in the water, and that's how they would tell how fast they were going, trailing their ropes behind them. But sometimes in our lives, it can feel like we're not moving at all. We recently did a podcast where we talked about being at the start of something, being at the beginning, getting lots of new information, overcoming inertia, and just like, it just feels like so much is happening at once, because it is. But there are times when a lot is happening and it doesn't feel like a lot is happening, or it feels like there's some real delayed gratification. So we just want to explore how to recognize forward motion, even when it doesn't feel dramatic.
I have a lot of thoughts on this.
I want to hear your thoughts. That's why I'm here today.
Emily's here to hear my thoughts. Actually, I want to just clarify about the knots.
Yeah.
Here's how old-timey sailors...
She's like, stop talking.
I'm not going to let this go. Pun intended. So here's how they used to have a rope that would have knots in the rope at certain intervals. And they would lower this rope into the water at the front of the boat or the bow, and they would reel it out or unspool it so that it would flow down the side of the boat. And when it reached the back of the boat, you knew the length of your boat and you knew how many knots there would be in the rope between the front and the back of the boat. And based on how many knots you spooled out, then you could say, oh, we're going 3 knots or 8 knots or whatever, or 12 knots, whatever, however many knots got spooled out. for the length of the boat, that was how you knew how fast you were going. And
Yeah.
that's where the term knots comes from.
Yeah.
And
And you could do that whether it was wind in your face or not, like what we're talking about today.
regardless of the direction, you can always just drop a rope or spool a rope out into the water and see how much of it flows past. And actually, I bring that up because that's actually how you tell you how quickly you're moving when you're sailing upwind or downwind. Or actually, I'll just say, like I read in this excerpt, when you're sailing into the wind, it's you feel like you're moving because there's just, you have that motion on your face. And when you're moving, it's a funny thing. As soon as you could be in the same boat, same weather, same moment, and you turn the boat a different direction, and all of a sudden everything goes calm and there's no breeze. It starts to feel a little stuffy. You get a little clammy, and it's not as fun. But you're actually just moving with the wind. And so sometimes, but it's also a much more comfortable point of sail. When you're going into the wind, that's when you're kind of pounding into the waves or bashing into the waves, and you get that splash across the bow.
Like that log ride feeling.
Yeah, you get that log ride feeling. And when you go downwind, you don't get any of that. And so sailing, unfortunately, the most efficient and most comfortable way to get somewhere on a sailboat is actually the most boring. And that is probably true for life. So
It could be. Do you have any thoughts about times in your life that were like that?
Yeah, well, I'll just say this about, we don't have a spool of rope with knots in it, but oftentimes when we're sailing downwind, and when I go out with folks and we start sailing downwind, everybody kind of looks around like, is this still working? And I'll be like, yes, let's all go over to the side of the boat and let's look into the water, and there'll be a little bit of sea foam, and you just watch it gently glide past. Or you can take a tortilla chip and throw it into the water, and you just see how quickly it moves past and disappears into the wake. And you realize that it doesn't feel like you're progressing, but if you look at the evidence and you have to look for it, you definitely are. And I think that that's true for life. And that's why I'm a big fan of tracking stuff. And
yes, tracking stuff. Well, one of the things when we don't talk about this much on the podcast, we mostly just talk about sailing, but when we are coaching people to get to whatever their destination or their island is, it can be any kind of goal, not a sailing goal. One of the main value adds that it seems is when we meet together for our weekly or every couple of weeks check in. Did they do what they said they were going to do and stuff like that? And they'll feel like I didn't make much progress. And because we're on the outside, we're not moving along with them, we're able to say, you emailed this person, you got a response, you did this, you did this, you did this. Like you didn't arrive at an island, but you were moving pretty quick towards your goal. You were actually taking steps. You formed this habit, whatever it might be. And we're able to help them see that they are making progress, even though they're like, well, I wake up in my same house and I'm eating my same breakfast and I'm taking my kids to their same classes. And it feels like they haven't done much towards their goal when they really are like overcoming inertia and making things happen.
Yeah. So if you go back and listen to earlier episodes, you'll hear me talk about this. I am a big believer in tracking, and I'll tell you a few things that I track. I track my weight every day except Sunday. I give myself a day off of knowing that number, and I write down how many words I've written. And I also do a lot of metrics. And this might seem like a weird one, but we're coming up on talking to almost 1,000 people about going sailing. Since we started opening this up after COVID, we've talked to almost 1,000 people about going sailing. Not all those people have gone sailing. It hasn't always lined up. But
we couldn't even take that many people sailing.
We can't take that many people sailing. And that's just a fraction of the people that have expressed interest. But I know that. And over the past year and change that we've kind of been doing what I call our crew Q&A calls, it would be easy to feel like we're not making a lot of progress because it's first of all, I don't do those calls anymore. Our assistant helps out with those calls. But I know that number, and that's pretty meaningful to me. One, it makes me feel good that so many people are interested in these kinds of experience that, for themselves. And I'm grateful that we're able to be helpful in some way, and know that this is it's there's a lot of people that want to experience this, and I'm grateful we have the wherewithal to offer it.
Yeah, but the point there is that you're tracking. You're not counting on your memory or your feelings of the day to say, how is it going? You're able to look at metrics and get
Yeah.
some data to know how it's actually going. But and sometimes there isn't a daily number you can look at. Like if you think about in parenting, for example, if there was a time when you felt like maybe you weren't really getting through to your kids, maybe you were repeating this message daily or whatever, but the behavior wasn't shifting, only to realize later that they actually did absorb more than you thought and things shift down the road. Sometimes those take years to see. Like there's a real delayed gratification, but you're like, I was steadily maintaining my same expectations, my same standards, teaching it again and again. And then suddenly at some point, it sinks in.
There's an epiphany.
Yeah. I would say for our family, like when we were living on the sailboat, we weren't tracking on a daily basis how cohesive are we, how much of a team are we, how many skills has each person checked off for sailing or whatever. We didn't track like that, but we could tell from the beginning how we behaved in times of trial and turmoil, and then at the end when we would face challenging situations, how the whole family pulled together, and we were able to see, wow, like as a family, we've traveled this many miles that we can track, but we can also now observe that we have become a stronger team and that we work together better. So that's one example to me of like downwind sailing, or that no apparent wind. Like it wasn't obvious, like, hey, we're becoming a better team, until we were put to the test again down the road.
Yeah. Well, I guess, and because I think, would you say it's fair to say that we, from a personality standpoint, we tend to skew one way and the other, you and me, on this? Or is that,
Yeah, just explain it a little more, what you mean about our personalities.
what I mean by that?
That you're more of a tracker.
I tend to be more metrics and numbers and quantifiers, and you're more, how would you describe it?
Oh, well, it's just for me that I usually am thinking about like, what's the relationship? For me also, I like to look backwards over time to see the progress. Like I would be the person who trails the rope off the back of the boat to be like, oh yeah, we're moving, And so you told about a fitness goal you have. I, on the other hand, weigh periodically. I like to stay within a range. It's like a few times per week, but not every single day. And I'll track foods for a while, and then I'll take some days off and see how it goes. And then I guess I better be tracking again. But I would say, like, I know when I started lifting weights, and I've been doing that for 2 years now. And I don't know. I just know that I have to lift heavier weights now than I did when we started. And that's one of the ways that I'm tracking.
Well, what you're describing to me reminds me of a book that I can't remember if I've read it or listened to it or just read I think I've read an excerpt of it. It's called The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Harding. And they talk about, when you're moving towards especially a big goal can take years. It can take a decade or more than a decade. It's something that happens over a long period of time, like raising a child, let's say, that's going to take decades. And so when you're sailing and you look at something in the distance, it just feels like it's never getting closer. There's always going to be a gap between where you are and where you want to go. And then usually when you get there, then you sort of pick another destination out in front. And there's always a gap between where you are and where you want to be. And then what Dan Sullivan and Ben Harding teach is that if you actually turn around, like you're saying, and look backwards, you see the gain. if you've sailed off from shore, you realize, oh, we're that far away from the coastline now. I didn't realize that those buildings or those trees or those rocks they're now so small because we've traveled so far. And also it's a way to say, wow, look how far I've come. And sometimes you can say, like, as an example, let's say you're trying to get out of debt, and you can say, God, I've still got so much more to pay off. We're never going to wipe out this debt. But then if you look back and say, well, where did we start and how far have we come? That can feel really encouraging to say, we've actually covered a lot of territory. And yes, we have some more distance to cover, but we are making progress. And just knowing that is sometimes all we need.
That's a perfect example. Thanks for sharing that. And I think that can be the same in a career. You might feel like, oh, I'm at this plateau, or I love the chipping away at debt, or maybe you're chipping away at trying to accrue savings, and you're not seeing a dramatic change. But if you look back over 5, 7, 10 years, wow, what a difference that makes. So sometimes it needs a little time. Another example might be, maybe even just getting this sailing business started. We were just chipping away, chipping away, chipping away. And now, like you said, there have been almost 1,000 people who've been interested in coming out sailing with us. We've been to probably, how many different destinations and how many people we've been able to take out. And like, for example, we went on this, the first commercial sailing trip that we went on where we were doing that, like
Where
that
we
were getting paid to take people sailing. We had a dare at the end of that trip where, our eyes had all been opened and we'd been having these expansive conversations about, hey, now that we're away from all of our regular everyday responsibilities and tugs and kind of frameworks in our mind, what do you really want? What do you really wish that you could do with your life if you weren't worried about what anybody else thought, or how you're not, even if you're not sure how you would pull it off or whatever, but like, what is that thing that you really feel in your heart that you would do? And there were a couple of dares. One dare was a friend who has her own podcast, and she dared herself to invite a very high profile person to come be on her podcast. And right away, she was able to reach out, and he accepted, and they did the interview, and it was great. But there was another one. It was a young woman in her early 20s, and she had been going one direction with her career, and I can't even remember what it was now. But on that trip, she said, well, I really wish that I could become a pilot. And she had a baby step in mind, which was going up for a flight with a friend who was in flight school, who had already offered to take her up. She was, I'm going to accept that offer and see how I feel about it. And then she learned about, she just kept going a little bit deeper, finding mentors, learning about what it would take, what would it look like. And like maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, her mom posted on Instagram that she actually just completed all her requirements to become a commercial pilot.
Yeah.
That was like a
so pumped.
slow train from December 2020 to September 2025.
It's been about almost 5 years. 5 years.
But she was just racking up hours, racking up experience, and now here she is. Like now she's arrived. But I bet for a lot of that, it just felt like, I'm never going to get there. This is just taking forever. Here I am circling around again, going through the motions again, And so anyway, that's an example of sometimes where it can feel like, oh, I'm just slogging it out here.
So yeah,
but you are making progress.
Yeah, I would say I think there's 2 ways to avoid discouragement or to find encouragement when you're moving towards a long-term goal. One is this idea of looking backwards to recognize, you have the gap in front of you of where you are and where you want to be, but then looking back and seeing how far you've come. That's recognizing the gain. And then the other is, this is all Atomic Habits. Who's our Atomic Habits guy? Who wrote that? Oh, forgive me. Google it. Anyway, reading his book, I love how he's the power of just measuring something, no matter how small. And I want to give you some examples of things that I measure that might be a little bit silly. Um, I measure how many times I play music, so that I know, oh, you know what? I want to play music once a week or twice a week, whatever it is. Am I doing that? I can measure how often do I go rock climbing, because I enjoy that and it brings me a lot of satisfaction. It's good for my health. And it's nice to, if that number is not going up, it's like a gauge read for me to know, oh, I've been neglecting this. Or there was a time when I wanted to eat more ice cream.
Oh, that was a good goal.
It was a reward system for myself. And whenever I just said, I'm going to track how often I eat ice cream. And if I go too long without eating ice cream, I'm going to have to change. I have to change and do better, Erik. So you can track whatever you want. And so that's sort of a going forward approach. There's also the going backwards approach. Those are my two ideas about how, because in a boat, like I say, just throwing a corn chip over the side and watching it float behind you can actually be really encouraging. You're like, oh, yeah, we are moving. I don't feel any wind in my face, but we're making progress. You can always look at the digital readout and be like, oh, the readout says we're doing 4 knots or 6 knots or whatever it is, but
it doesn't look like
it's
anything.
It's not that satisfying, because you're like, oh, maybe it's broken. But if if you look at something you physically with your eyes, that can feel more encouraging.
And I also like to look at benchmarks. Like, have you skilled up? Sometimes we go on these sailing trips and the people come on and they're like, don't know the vocabulary, not sure how the things work, asking lots of questions, needing a lot of supervision. And then at the end of the week, just saying, do this task, and they do it. And they can then see like how much progress they've made, even though we haven't been saying, how much time did you spend coiling ropes on this trip? Or did you put fenders, or were you,
they take a test sort of
raising the anchor? No, but yeah. It's just that they do the same thing again later, and they don't need as much help or supervision, right?
We give out merit badges on these trips. They could do it.
Sometimes I draw a little star on a piece of paper, and people like that. Another way, one of the things I can tell when you are making a shift forward, or that you might recognize if you're self-aware, is you might say, I'm doing the same thing, but now my attitude has improved. Or I'm doing the same thing, but now I'm doing it faster, or I'm doing it more smoothly. Or I'm doing the same thing. I'm still having the same struggle, but I'm recovering faster. There's less time between when I fall down and when I get up again. And we can track those kind of things as progress as well. So anyway, it's easy to confuse the absence of apparent wind with the absence of progress. And we all go through seasons when life feels like we're not really moving at all. But that doesn't mean that we're not moving forward. And so maybe look for some of these little things where you're being consistent, you're getting faster, you're getting smoother, your recovery is quicker, you have a better attitude. You can literally point to say, hey, I've done this every day for however many years, or I've done this many words, or I've eaten this many ice creams. So you will know what works best for you. But if you just take a little moment to pat yourself on the back right now and think about how far you've come in the past 5 years, from what you were worrying about 5 years ago, from what you were trying to make happen 5 years ago, and to where you are right now, and just take a look at that gain. What could go right?
Hey everyone, before we sign off today, this is Erik, Orton, and I just want to give you the sailing update. A few weeks ago, we put out our schedule for the whole year, all of 2026. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of trips that are coming up that I think are really worth remembering. We are going to be spending the winter in the British Virgin Islands, the BVI. So we're going to do a trip early January, late January, and February. And I love the BVI, and I'm going to tell you why. It is easy to get to. The sailing is world class. There's fantastic snorkeling. It's sunny at a time of year when, wherever you are in the world, January and February, chances are it's a little bit cold, a little bit gloomy. This is the perfect getaway for midwinter. So January 5th through the 10th, we're going to be in the BVI. We'll be there again January 26th through the 31st, and then again February 16th through the 21st. Another thing is these will be our lowest price trips of the year. After these trips, prices jump to our new season setting. So if you want to get the best bang for your buck, BVI January 5 through 10, 26 through 31, or February 16 through 21. If you're feeling spendy, March, we are going to French Polynesia. We're going to do a one-way sail from Raiatea to Bora Bora. Bora Bora is gorgeous. The last time we were there was, I want to say, 2017. So we don't go very often. It's almost double the cost of our other trips. If you can afford it, it's super worth it. And it's beautiful. Imagine just like the biggest expanses of turquoise water and incredible sea life and fun restaurants and beautiful scenery. So if you want to go to French Polynesia in March, we're going to be there March 8th through the 14th. If not, if that's a little bit out of your range, which I totally get, our January and February trips to the BVI are going to be your best deal for the year. So click the button or just go to the Awesome Factory / the Awesome Factory / sorry, let me get this right. The Awesome Factory.nyc/sailing. That'll take you to the page that explains everything. Let's hop on a call, or you can email us at hello@theawesomefactory.nyc. Would love to sail with you in Q1 of next year. There's a couple of spots left on each of the BVI trips, so we'd love to welcome you aboard, and whether there or Bora Bora, either way, it'd be fun to sail together. Before we wrap up entirely, people go sailing with us, and I want you to hear from them directly what kind of experience they have. So here's a sailing takeaway from somebody who's gone sailing with us recently.
Any takeaways? Just that it just reconfirms that I want to get my own boat and move on it. I just want to live on a boat. I'm gonna get one. I'm hoping in a year. That's my goal anyway. The next year I'm gonna have my own boat.